Shalom, I'm Rabbi Stephen Sachs. What is the significance of the rainbow? The rainbow is God's covenant that He will never destroy the world again via flood. But what exactly is a covenant? Covenant is an agreement. Today we celebrate an Ufrav, tomorrow a wedding. Marriage too is a covenant. It is an agreement between the parties. If you look at the ketubah, the Jewish wedding contract, it reads like a legal contract, an agreement. But what's the key to a good covenant? What's the key to a good marriage? In a word, compromise. We'll see in next week's Parsha that Abraham enters into a covenant with God. How does he do so? He cuts an animal, walks through the animal, and then sews the animal back together. And this was how covenants were made in the ancient Near East. This cutting is significant. It symbolizes that when you enter into a covenant, you have to compromise and cut away some of those conditions in order to compromise. This is demonstrated by one of my favorite TV shows, Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld gets engaged, he's all excited, comes home and tells his next door neighbor Kramer. Kramer says to him, "Jerry, are you nuts? Do you know what marriage is, Jerry? It's a man-made prison." Jerry looks concerned. Kramer continues, said, "You think you're going to come home and eat donuts? Forget about it. You have to sit down at the dinner table with your wife, have a proper dinner, and talk about your day. She's going to ask you how your day was, and you're going to have to respond. And then she's going to expect you to ask her about her day. And you are going to have to listen." Jerry is shocked, mortified, and cancels the wedding. It's a facetious example, but there's a lot of truth in this. John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, points out that on average, women speak many thousand words a day more than men do. They're more verbal by nature. It's a generalization, but there's a lot of truth in generalizations. In fact, I had this happen to me. When I was in college, I was dating a girl. And when at the end of the day, she would ask me how my day was. I would give her a brief highlight maybe. Then I would ask her how her day was. And she would say, "Well, first I got up. Then I did this, and then I did that, and this and that. And then I had lunch." And then she would continue throughout the afternoon. So what do we do? Well, if you're married to a guy who needs his space, as most men do, when he comes home from work, let him sit down on the couch, watch TV, read for a little bit. But guys, afterwards, then sit down with your wife at the dinner table, have a proper dinner, put the donuts away, and talk about your day. Ask her about her day, and then tell her about your day. Compromise. Let me share a compromise that my wife and I came up with when we first got married that has worked very well for us. Probably will not surprise you at all to hear that my wife loves to shop. Won't surprise you that I do not love to shop. Going to the mall shopping is not exactly my idea of fun, especially when a Sunday afternoon there's a good football game on. But my wife really wanted me to go shopping with her. She wanted me to tell her if I thought the clothing looked good or get my opinion, all of that stuff. So I said, "Fine, Ann, I'll go with you on one condition, that you let me bring something to read." She said, "Why? It's going to be so much fun." I said, "Trust me, just let me bring something to read." So she said, "Okay." So this is how we would go shopping. And now we have kids, so it doesn't really apply anymore. I run around and play with the kids. But this is what would happen. She'd go and try something on. I'd read my magazine. She'd come out and say, "Stephen, do you like it?" I would look up and say, "Yes, I do." Then she would say, "You're just saying that so I'll buy it and we can leave." And I would say, "Yes, that's true." But then I would give her my real opinion, say it looks good, or maybe you should try something else on. And this compromise worked. But now, let me ask another question. Why compromise at all? Well, I'm going to ask you to go back a minute to your elementary school days and when you learned about the founding of the United States. Why did the 13 colonies merge into one United States? Because as 13 individual colonies, they were weak, ineffective. But when they came together to merge, they formed a powerful, effective nation. Same thing applies in marriage. As a couple, you accomplish more. This is indicated when God creates woman for man. He explains that he's creating an ezer kenegdo, a helpmate for man. Someone to help him. Someone to complement his skills. In other words, what's God telling us? That husbands are to help their wives and wives are to help their husbands. And as a couple, they accomplish more. And in fact, we see a good spouse will do just that. It's a life friend, someone to share the happy times with, someone to console you in those sad times, to remove those lonely nights, and someone who will help you to improve yourself. And believe me, my wife is always telling me how I can improve myself. And most importantly, it's somebody to build a family with. So in conclusion, we wish our Chatan and Kala, our bride and groom, a life of compromise, life of partnership, and a life of